Solange Mougin joins me on the set now for today's press review. Hi, Solange.
Hi, Jeannie.
You're starting here in France, where there's a lot of reaction to the Parliament's approval of the vaccine pass.
Yeah, France's switch from a health pass to a vaccine pass, well, it's had a rough ride through Parliament these past weeks. But finally, yesterday, the legislation went through. And for l'opinion, the stops and starts of the bill, it was a fantastic saga, they say, that is not over. A final episode is still to come, with MPs bringing the issue up in front of the Constitutional Council, so we'll have to see there. But as for what it really means for French people, Le Parisien explains that the pass will require proof of vaccination and not just a negative COVID test to access most venues. And the new pass, which applies to all those over 16, well, it will go into effect as early as by the end of the week.
Now, France is stepping up pressure on non-vaccinated people here. Meanwhile, Austria has gone even further.
Yeah, Die Presse tells us that Austria has announced that being vaccinated against COVID will become a requirement next month for all those over the age of 18. But it notes that there is still some temporary leeway. Austrians will not be fined or punished for not having their vaccine passed until the month of March.
Now, staying with the COVID theme, Novak Djokovic is making headlines, of course, across the globe again today as he's been deported from Australia.
Yeah, it is the latest and perhaps final chapter of the Novak Djokovic saga, as it's called often on social media. And for the Sydney Morning Herald, there's been game, set, vax, they say. The tennis star's bid to stay in Australia and play during the Australian Open has ended with the courts ruling that he needs to leave the country. And for the Courier Mail, the return of Serb, a wordplay there on return of serve, may come as welcome news to a majority of Australians, but it has nonetheless also stirred an anti-vax movement down under. And it has also created ire in the Serbian press. As we see on the front page of Alo, there is a defiance of what it calls, quote, the criminal treatment of the greatest champion of all time, end quote. And the paper vows that Novak Djokovic will be back and stronger than ever. Now, the EU version of Politico, it explains that such praise has deep roots. In Serbia, Djokovic is a balm of all ills, they say, and any criticism of him is akin to reopening of old wounds, they say, namely those of their nation being seen in a negative light worldwide during the Balkan War.
Next, now you've been taking a look at that volcanic eruption not far from Tonga and its aftermath.
Yeah, as we can see in the photos from the Tongan site Mantagi, Tonga, the volcanic eruption was so massive that it created gravity waves and sent ash to levels 3 times higher than a commercial airplane flies. Now, the images are stunning, but it is important to note that they were published this weekend. For the eruption and the tidal waves. Because of them, communication has been very spotty, as the press tells us. Now, with underwater internet cables potentially damaged, many Tongans in New Zealand are waiting anxiously for word from home. And as we wait for news and ongoing studies of the Hunga Tonga, the claim that such major eruptions could help cool the Earth's surface, these things have surfaced and it actually can occur. But Forbes gives us a bit of a cold shower over this idea. It says at least it is wishful thinking to hope that such an explosion or others in the future could buy us time with climate change. Rather, a University of Michigan professor notes in Common Dreams that climate change could, with so much glacier melting, increase the amount of volcanic activity and, of course, create bigger tidal waves.
All right, you've got another report for us, actually, that comes from Oxfam on wealth inequality.
Yeah, the charity has found that the world's top 10 richest people, all of them white men, more than doubled their wealth during the pandemic, and that surge from a collective $700 billion to $1.5 trillion would normally have taken a decade. Meanwhile, as L'Humanité notes, COVID has pushed 160 million people into poverty. The French paper says that this is proof alone that radical change needs to occur and to redistribute wealth, and it needs to happen quickly.
All right, Solange, just to wrap up now, you found an article that explains the latest social media phenomenon that I've actually heard of for once.
It's called Wordle, and you may actually have noticed it in your online social media feeds. These are actually scorecards of sorts of a user having managed to guess the game's word of the day in less than 6 tries. Now, the Washington Post explains the rules of the game and gives us Wordle's origin story. It started as a tiny project that the developer, Josh Wordle, he created this for his friends. And actually, for him, Wordle's success has not been so great, he says, because he's now struggling with the sudden responsibility that it's given him to keep it going. Perhaps, this is me guessing, perhaps too, he just doesn't like those things, those Wordle scorecards popping up on his Twitter feeds. All the same, Numerama tells us the quick game has much appeal for people, so much so that there are a plethora of other sites that are copying the Wordle game, and there are even actually a couple French sites. They're called Soutom and Le Mot, or the word.
If you want to work on your French, that's a great idea.
Exactly.
Solange, thank you so much for that. Solange Mugender with that look at today's press review. Don't forget, if you want to get a closer look at that, check it out again. You can always do that on our website. The address is france24.com. There's a lot more to come for you on France 24. Don't go away.